Vice President Kamala Harris made a trip to South Carolina today. The goal, to file the paperwork to put President Joe Biden and her on the 2024 presidential ballot. South Carolina is going to lead off the Democratic presidential primary thanks to a White House-led schedule overhaul meant to empower black voters. The DNC approved a new 2024 calendar where South Carolina's primary will be on February 3rd. Nevada will be held, of course, 3 days later. The schedule also moves Michigan into the group of early states, voting before Super Tuesday on March 5th, when most of the country has primaries. In recent months, Harris has traveled the country to build excitement among young people and voters of color, when polls show that most Democrats believe Biden is too old for a second term. My panel joining me right now from Detroit, Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network show, Joy Cheney, founder of JOI Strategies out of D.C., Matt Manning, civil rights attorney out of Corpus Christi, Texas. Glad to have all three of you. Joy, I want to start with you. Lord, the white folks in New Hampshire and Iowa have lost their mind. They are still upset. They're mad. New Hampshire says, how dare you? They are still going to go first. Bottom line is Biden's name is not even on the ballot there. What you have going on there, you have folks trying to write his name in there. And I've always thought it to be incredibly arrogant of New Hampshire and Iowa to think that somehow they knew better than everybody else and they had a right to only be the first two to go. And I don't mind this change at all.
No, I don't mind this change at all. So I'm a DNC alum, and it was always sacrosanct for a long time that Iowa and New Hampshire had to be first. But we know that what was is not what is, and that changes do have to be made. So I'm really thrilled to see this change, and I think that the country will be just fine. We are more diverse. We are, than we've ever been. And people are engaged, and especially for the Democratic Party, we need to make sure the entire country is represented. And I think we're going to see the proof in the pudding. Seeing what happens when South Carolina kicks things off will make a huge difference. Why should Iowa and New Hampshire set the tone for the rest of the nation? And I hope my other panelists will agree.
You know, Michael, again, I think back to 2008 when Michigan and Florida, they wanted to have a greater say. They moved their primary. The Dems said, no, we're not going to count your delegates. And they didn't. Even after the fact, they still said, we're not counting your delegates. The parties control when they have these primaries. The issue for me is, and forget the fact that Biden never has done well in the first two states. I still believe that the move was good, it was necessary, and at some point, you got to put arrogant folks in their place. And if you're Iowa and New Hampshire, what they really are pissed off about is that the millions and millions of dollars that normally are spent in their states on hotels, television, radio, food, staff, all of those things, that ain't happening. And that's why they're upset.
Well, that's part of the reason why they're upset. The other part of the reason why they're upset is because it moves to the forefront issues that are pertinent with the African American community. Okay, this is another reason, and it's going to cause other people who are running. Now, I'm not talking about other Democrats because that's just a waste of time, but it's going to cause other people who are running and paying attention to have to shift their policy platform. Okay, so this was a huge move. Now, what has to happen is that we have to capitalize on this and actually understand our own issues. Because as you talked about here on this show before, Roland, numerous times, as we deal with Tamika Mallory, as we talk to Cliff Albright, things like this, a lot of African Americans, unfortunately, don't understand our own issues and don't understand how to bring into fruition what it is that we even say that we want. But what this does is it pushes to the forefront policies that are critical and beneficial to the African American community. So this is a huge win for African Americans, and I think it's going to benefit the Democratic Party. And we have to remember, 16.9 million African Americans voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in 2020, and this is part of the dividends. This is part of the rewards of that.
You know, Matt, again, the folks in Iowa, New Hampshire, they have been just beside themselves, just so angry, so upset. And it does change the focus on the issues that are talked about as the outset of the campaign, and which I think is important. You take Nevada. Nevada, by being second, has a significant Latino population. That changes the focus, if you will. I was so sick and tired of hearing about them damn farmers and ethanol and all that crap, in Iowa. And it was, and let's just be clear, the Iowa Democratic Party totally screwed up their caucus. I was on the set of CNN in 2012. We were there till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because they didn't know how to count, hell, only 200,000 people. And I still think the caucus system is stupid anyway. Again, I think the change is good and necessary, and it's going to make for a much more interesting, a much more interesting open primary in 2028.
Well, and I think that the protest shows you that a lot of what you hear rhetorically as it relates to the issues is more virtue signaling than it is anything else, and that their self-interest is really what's driving a pushback against changing it to South Carolina, particularly as we see social issues always discussed. It's a lot of times liberal white people who are carrying the mantle for that. But when the opportunity comes for Black issues to be at the forefront because of the sequencing, you see a pushback. So one, I think that kind of ferrets out who's really about what they say they're about. But hopefully this will have a measurable effect too on the approval ratings in terms of how they do in that primary and in terms of putting our issues first, because I know right now the Biden and Harris administration is struggling with approval ratings as it relates to the Israel conflict. So I'm interested in seeing what hopefully a strong turnout there will have on that effect and on the effect of momentum with all the primaries.